Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the podcast. On this episode I sat down with Slade. You may remember Phil from back in episode 4 when we talked about just all things psychology, but in this episode I wanted to sit down and talk to him about journaling in particular. I tried journaling before but never really been able to continue with it. But I know that so many people do it and they have success with it, and I thought, well, what's this all about and how can I get better at it and how can I sort of learn all about how it's going to help me? And so, turns out Decida actually have a 10-minute journal which they produced. I didn't notice until after the podcast, and I've been using that for the last couple of weeks and it's been helping me so much. Phil was incredible. He's a wealth of knowledge, loves to talk, so passionate about what he does. And we sat down and had a few wines in his cellar, which makes things even better. Yeah, I really hope you enjoy this episode. People seem to love the last one. He's just so knowledgeable about his field of study. It's really cool to see. So I just really hope you guys enjoy this episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this video or leave a review or feedback on if you're listening online. And thanks so much again for all your support, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye guys.
A live intro.
So just like I'm trying. Maybe at episode 100 I'll get there. So.
Yeah, and it's all, you just care less the older you get. That's all it is.
Exactly,
you don't actually get better. You just it's fine. No one cares.
And that's what I'm trying to kind of do, I think, as well, is have that balance of like done is better than perfect as well. Like what's my big thing is like progression.
Yeah.
Progression over perfection.
Yeah, or content's better than quality.
Yeah, I like that one as well.
Yeah.
You can have the best looking setup, but if you talk crap, then,
Well, I saw a really interesting picture. Every now and then I see a good picture on LinkedIn that really represents a concept. I love the concept of perfection, and for a perfectionist, it's really hard to let them know that their perfection isn't what you need it to do, because you're sort of undermining, well, why wouldn't you do it perfectly?
Yeah.
And there was a picture of a guy on a runway, and he was painting the lines down the middle of the runway with a fine art brush, for the whole runway. It's like, dude, you just need some lines on the no one's gonna care.
No one cares at all.
In fact, except for the fact that it's taken you 2 years to do a job that you could have done in 2 weeks, that sort of thing. So I love that picture. That's just the perfect picture of the problem with perfectionism, but so lauded. Those lines are so beautiful and straight. Well done. Irrelevant.
Yeah, and they're just going to get covered in black tie marks.
Pretty much. No, I love that. It's a perfect perfection picture.
Yeah. So what are we drinking here?
We are drinking a Shiraz. This is a Shiraz from my favorite wine region, the Granite Belt.
Oh yes.
From a little winery called Golden Grove, and so they're just out there near Ballindine, which is sort of south of Stanthorpe.
I've been to Ballindine Wines.
Yeah. Literally they're across the road, you can walk from one to the other.
Yeah.
And there's a little cluster of great wineries just at Ballindine there. One hill in particular where you got Tobin on one side and Golden Grove on the other, and it's a great day out to just go to Ballindine and try some wines. And Ballindine Estate, I think, has got one of the best restaurants that I've ever eaten at. It's really amazing.
I've been to Tobin as well. I went out there for my brother's 30th or something. Went camping out there and did all the wine tasting. It's a nice place, eh?
Oh, great. And Anton does some incredible wines as well. Like there's something about the soil there that you can really taste the granite. So it's one of my favorite regions. They really do these big, bold Spanish varieties out there, and Italian wines. And,
have you always been into wine? Has it been, or not always, I guess, as a kid, but
that's not maybe when I was a young child. Look, I think you appreciating good things is what I think is always a great gift, and I think wine is one of those things that can be abused, of course, but it's supposed to be very appreciated. And I think when you learn to appreciate a great wine, it really is something that you can savor, and that's the side of it that I love, and that you really can tell the difference between the different varieties and the grades of what's a good and great or not so great wine. And when you hit that occasional great wine, it's just like, that's just amazing, as a sensation. I try to everything in moderation, of course, but no, I do love the the complexity of great wine.
Yeah. I watched a thing on Netflix. It was called Sommelier. I think it was just called Sommelier. And there's another one called Beyond the Bottle or something.
Yeah, the Somm series.
Yeah. They were awesome. They gave me a real kind of appreciation for it.
Yeah.
And just that whole being able to, and obviously my palate isn't, like I haven't got that kind of Refidex that they talk about of smells.
Yeah.
But the way that you can kind of, and I've found myself doing it, like I take time now to sort of smell the wine, but it just brings back memories. Like certain little things in that can trigger a memory.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
Oh, look, I love that Somm film. There's a little moment in that film where a guy sort of swivels the wine and he sort of closes his eyes and it's a blind tasting. And you think he's just going to say Shiraz or Cab Sav or something like that. And he goes, New World, Australia, Clare Valley, Shiraz, and then names the winery, and you just think you're a freak. I'm nowhere near the Jedi status of some of those other sommeliers, But
as they say, like to build that up, you've got to just they go and smell things. As a hobby. They'll go and smell different things.
What does burnt tire smell like and taste like?
Like one of the one is like. Was it crushed or cut garden hose? Like freshly cut garden hose. And it sounds silly, but that's the kind of the smell you get.
Yeah. Dirty undergrowth is my favourite. Dirty undergrowth. You go, what is dirty undergrowth? I have no idea what that is.
I want to know what dirty undergrowth is.
I know. What is that? But apparently it's a thing, right?
Yeah.
You can actually taste it, dirty undergrowth. So that's the extreme side of smelly, and I'm definitely not down that end. I just love I have a good appreciation for a great wine.
And that's good. Well, that is nice wine. Really nice wine. So let's get into what we're meant to be talking about.
Yes. Speaking about things that give us good psychological benefit.
Yeah, exactly. Digital journaling. So that's where we're going to start. It's something you've kind of released as a product. Is it a product or is it just like a service?
Well, it's a bit of both. I mean, I think we started. I think the science of journaling is fascinating. The fact that when you journal, you're pretty much getting your story out on a page. And what's really fascinating is what happens neurologically when you do that to your psychology. How it tends to order, focus you, bring you into alignment with what's really important to you, and allows you to become a lot more resilient through the day and a lot more confident in your trade-off decisions that you make. So we started with a diary, and we still got a diary on the site. And we sort of said most people are not good diary makers. One of my business partners is fantastic. She literally has kept a diary every day for most of her life.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I've never been that good, right? And so I understood the science of diary, but even though I understood the science, I just couldn't do it. Yeah. So it's like, how can I make it really, really easy for me? So making a diary for me.
Scratch your own itch, kind of.
Pretty much, So I really went through this whole phase of really looking at what the neuroscience of journaling, and I suppose what works for people, So there's a little bit getting into the science of it, but then actually going to people and saying, why do you journal and what works for you and what are the things that you do and what are the habits that you create in order to maximize this journal experience, and then see if I can distill that down so people can do it in like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, and there are a lot of sort of 5, 10, 20-minute journals. And so we sort of put all the things together that we thought were important in the morning and the night, and it sort of takes about 10 minutes. So it's like a 10-minute journal, and you've got something that you do in the morning when you get up, something you can do just before you go to bed, and it was a handwritten journal. The problem that we found with that was that in the morning and in the evening, particularly if someone's got a partner, you've got a pen, you've got a light that's on, you've got to write, and a lot of people can do that, but it's not really, couldn't really do it in bed or on the bus or things like that, which is where they would often do it. So we decided to then look at the concept of the digital journal and what that would be like. We experimented with a form, we experimented with just like free form writing, typing and texting. And the thing that we found worked the most was looking at a digital coach environment. So we'd already developed Andy, which was an artificial neuro digital interface for broader coaching, and it wasn't quite the AI isn't quite there yet to be able to do that broader coaching. But what we're able to do is take what we developed for that more of a coaching role and bring it into this, the guardrails of a diary entry. And it worked beautifully. And so people really responded to it, particularly young people really responded to that digital environment. And what we found was really interesting because we thought, there's a whole lot of study around writing something down, about drawing a picture, about how our mind works in pictures, and about how it can often explain the emotions that sit behind it if you draw or paint or do something like
how
this,
they
something
say,
physical.
like to do like a just free draw.
Yeah, you know, because it can just. It's a nice way to express something, you know. So drawing somebody who represents somebody that hurt you, you'll end up drawing them with an expression or a body position or something like that, which tells you a lot more about the way that you feel about that person, right? Or just
I've
drawing
seen them
a picture
do that with like kids, like how they say I think I've seen it in, say, kids being abused or something like that. They say, you know, can you draw me a picture of what life at home looks like? And if they draw it and it's all happy, then they go, oh, hang on. Well, that's not necessarily what's going on. We'll have to investigate more. But if they draw something, it tells 1,000 words and you think, oh, okay, let's dig into
and the
that
distance
more.
between and the perspective and all sorts of things that you can pick up from the way that kids draw. But our brains are the same, right? So we often thought that, but when you're in that chat space, you don't get that drawing sort of free form and sort of experience. And we thought, is it going to be as good? Now, our sort of hypothesis would be it's better than nothing, but it's not going to be as good, you know? So people at least will be in bed. They can do it on their phone. They can do it on their on the way to bus. You know, I wouldn't necessarily condone using a digital device in the bedroom, but it happens, you know, so we're building it for where people are at. And actually what we found is quite the opposite. Because they're being questioned and prompted, but it's a chatbot, they or a digital interface is better version of what it is rather than a chatbot. But they're much more honest with it, and it can be shorter and sharper and much more succinct. They're not writing in a narrative form. They punch things out in 10 words that would actually take them, you know, a paragraph to say when they were writing it, or you know, 10 minutes if they were talking to somebody. And so we find that people just really cut to the chase when they're on the chat. There's no pleasantries. There's no fear that it's going to be picked up and seen by somebody else, you know, as a book. But it helps them keep to account in the same way that a physical diary does. Now, I still like the physical diary, and I think a lot of people do, but I think that's as much habitual as anything else. So to see this really resonate and actually resonate across the age spectrum, you know, some of our biggest users are you know, from very different cultures, and you know, a lot of them are over 40 and a lot of them are under 20. There's sort of two really big groups there, and we think that's because of the busyness of life, their interactivity and where they are. It's still very heavily skewed female at the moment, but growingly, I think guys are starting to realise that this is actually a really useful tool to keep a check on your own psychology. You know, with the stress and the ambiguity and all the change that's going around. I think this is the perfect time to really jump into a diary, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because as a diary, what we're actually doing is creating a story. We're creating a narrative of our day and what we've learnt and what we want to do, and our brain has grown up to think in stories, in narrative. You know, as kids, we love cartoons. We love a beginning, a middle, a mystery, and an end. You know, we love going to the theatre. We love going to movies.
The way you
we love
play
stories.
is all around. You make up scenarios and things and characters.
And the way that we remember events is through stories. You think about how you remember something that happened 6-7 months ago. There's a story that you play through your head. That's the memory. It's linear. It's this happened and this happened and this happened, right? You don't just remember a standalone thing or event. It's got context, right? It's where are you? What does it smell like? What are you doing? What do you feel like? And what's the linear narrative, right?
I've never thought about that. You do, don't you? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and this is what's so important, I think, particularly when you go to sleep. So one of the things that we do in the evening for the diary is we say to people, you know, what's the one thing you want your brain to solve overnight? Because overnight, the reason that you dream is that's your brain putting all your memories into some sort of story. And that's why, if you went to the fair and you had a horrible experience with a friend that made you angry in another place, and you were you were then chased by a barking dog, you might have a dream of a fairy monster through a dark alley. But you know what I mean. It sort of squashes it all together.
This is a random tangent, but I had. Oh, it was only for the last 3 or 4 nights. I've just been having weird dreams. I don't usually dream crazy, but they've been really vivid. And I think it was must have been Monday night. I chatted to my mate, Nathan Harry.
Yeah,
we chatted online. I'd watched a podcast and they were talking about MDMA, the drugs.
Yeah.
And then I was looking at houses or something online, looking at the economics, what's going on in the world. And I had this dream that Nathan, Harry and I started a business where we were in California and we legally were selling MDMA drugs. And then we were selling them to a real estate broker.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, and sometimes it's much more esoteric than that. I mean, it's a lot of the dream sort of therapy is about understanding that the emotions that you put into the visuals don't necessarily match in a dream. So you'll be able to go listen to the emotions that are there and then go, okay, where have those emotions been misappropriated and actually what those emotions are here? And then you can pick that apart and people get this great insight. But it's just because it's the way that the brain collates things so that it can easily remember and learn from past experiences to help you survive, right? But it's just another example of your brain working while you're sleeping. That's what it's doing, and it's an example. It's evidence of that. But also that you think in stories, because when you dream in a story. It's never just, you don't just dream of a static picture, right?
Yeah.
You dream of a story. It's got a thing, right? You're doing something. So these two things that you can utilize, right? You know that your brain's doing that. So you can activate your brain. If you've got a thing that you just can't solve, if it's the last thing that you think about before you go to bed, that's the memory that your brain keeps ticking over. And you'll often get up in the morning, have a shower, and you're having a shower in the morning or something, and there's the solution because you won't even be thinking of it and just sort of come to you because in the background, your brain's been ticking over this thing. It's come up with a solution and you've just woken up enough to access it now,
Yeah,
so I think that's a fascinating sort of function of journaling. And then obviously in the morning to be able to say, what are the 3 things that are going to make today successful? What are the things that you're grateful for? Really practicing the art of gratefulness. And it's not just being grateful for, I'm grateful for my kids and my family and the fact that I have a roof over my head. And they're all great things, but learning the art of every day where you can't just say the same thing over and again, learning the art of saying, I'm grateful for this table that's in front of me and the fact that we can sit and do a podcast and that we're living in a time of technology that can mean that we can disseminate information in an entirely new way. I'm really grateful that I'm alive in this day and age. That practicing that gratefulness and being able to pull that gratefulness out of just the ordinary.
It sets your day up, sets everything up.
It does. It sets your day up because you start the day in a much more positive mindset. You really lose that victim mentality that sits around a lot of people's experiences because you're already focusing out. You're already grateful for those other things, and it becomes a world full of opportunity that's just there for you to grab. And then, some days you have bad days, and at the end of the day, to be able to at least articulate that what didn't go so right, just puts it to bed and you go, I'm done. I've put that in a box. There's the box. This is actually what I want to solve this evening. And you go to bed not thinking about all the crap that happened in your day. You put that in a box and you think about the thing that you need to focus on for tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about Danny and I, we've got those 5-minute journals. Have you seen those ones?
Yeah.
But same thing like what you're talking about before. We I go on a run with it. I do it quite a few weeks, and then all of a sudden I just leave it. And but I find that when I'm really doing it properly and sitting there and taking time out in the morning to kind of go, what am I actually grateful for? Those things pop up during the day as well. Like I'm more aware of the things around me that are positive, and it is amazing. And then also I think in that one as well, it says like, what's my goal? Or maybe I added that in at the start. I think I wrote in my big goal because if I set my day off thinking about that, I almost come back a lot throughout the day and go, does this align to me trying to reach that goal? That sort of thing. And it is definitely it's very valuable for sure.
And I think the good thing about the digital journal is it really does allow you to do it while you're on the bus or while you're waiting for somebody or you're on the phone or you really can take those moments to journal where you've actually got 10 minutes by yourself and you can focus just on doing that because you have those moments all through the day. I think the key can be for a lot of people though to build it into some sort of habitual routine for your day. I think what's fascinating about the coronavirus that's rolling through at the moment, we're just approaching a stage where people's routines are being significantly interrupted. Thrown out the window pretty much, and they've got to find their new routines. And so now really is the perfect time to reevaluate a lot of things that you're doing, a lot of pardon me, a lot of habits. Need to have a drink, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the perfect time to really reevaluate a lot of things in your life, whether it be things about your finances or how you're spending money or how you're looking after your health or both mentally and spiritually as well as physically, and how you're treating your relationships and picking that relationship apart. And realizing that your mental health needs that regular exercise, just like physical exercise or eating well or good spending behaviors. A diary is a really simple way of doing that, and it doesn't take a long time, and it's very inexpensive to do.
Yeah.
I know this, and I still have trouble doing it every day. Right? It's just it's one of those things that when you've got priorities and pressures, and you get up and you want to get into the day. You tend not to pause sometimes, particularly if you've slept in for an extra 10 minutes or something like that. And that's why having that routine in the morning by going, this is when I get up, irrespective of what I'm doing the day, I just get up at the same time, I go to bed at the same time, as much as possible. And you sort of build in those rhythms. So I have a rhythm for when I'm at home and I have a rhythm for when I'm traveling because not traveling much at the moment. We're all grounded, of course. But around the world, which is quite bizarre, but I have to have I slip into a different rhythm in order to be able to manage myself a little bit better in those spaces, So it's good, simple rules, simple routines, and just get some diarising sitting in there. I know a lot of guys that travel a lot and they use the aeroplane flights to just start writing a diary. Use that time. There's a time where you've got to put your laptops and your phones away and things like that, and you can just sit on the diary, and before the plane goes off, you've already done it, and you feel good.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's we have so much focus around building habits, other habits in our life. Sometimes we'll prioritize going to the gym, this sort of thing. But it's like, well, hang on. Even for me personally, there's been times where I'm going, my head is I just can't think right now. Like I'm just full of. You're almost so full of thoughts that you can't think at all.
So what do you do habitually to get to deal with that?
Usually have to write stuff down. So whether that be in a diary, but usually what I had just been using was my notes on my phone.
Yeah.
So I'll just sort of write it. A lot of times you read it back and you're like, oh, this makes no sense. But it kind of just gets my thoughts down. But the other thing I sometimes do is I if Daddy's not around or someone's not around, I kind of talk out loud to myself as well. It's meant to be the first sign of madness or whatever.
Just tells me that you're an extrovert, that's all.
I just verbalize it, and a lot of the times when it comes out of your mouth, I rationalize it. Either I go, oh, that's legitimate, I need to do something about that, or I go, why is that bothering you? That doesn't make any sense. Just let it go. Yeah, see, I think that's the fascinating thing about, introversion and extroversion. Most people mistakenly think introversion and extroversion is the loud person versus the quiet person, or the social person versus the isolated person. And whilst there are some correlates there, it's actually about how you process information.
I think working from home is a really interesting experiment in how, extroverts and introverts work in a new environment. Extroverts, they're called extroverts because you have to externalize, you have to extrovert your thoughts a lot of the time to make sense of them. So you talk, and as you talk, you're verbalizing, you're hearing it, it's externalizing and making sense to
definitely.
you. Introverts do the opposite, and so they internalize it. So people liking social situations sometimes isn't about, because I like talking to people, I just like externalizing my thoughts. So, I can finally think now. I'm talking, So extroverts are often great workers from home, great to really bunker down and work for really extended periods of times by themselves. It's just that they get their energy and their reset from being able to talk to somebody, externalize it, do something. Introverts are the same. They can be in social situations for a lot, but they just need that go away for a second, reset, get your mind in order. But the interesting thing is for extroverts and introverts, diaries work. They just work a little bit differently for each, and so you see some different patterns, but it works for both because we're all humans. And humans as brains, actually at a fundamental level, there's a lot that works the same. And so, it's not an introverted or an extroverted thing to do. It's just a thing that your brain likes to do. Then how you live the rest of your day might be a little bit different, but I find that really fascinating.
Yeah, and that's what I've found when I've used the digital journal that you guys have created. So I like talking to people to sort of externalize my thoughts and think through. But I find I can do that as well. Probably not as good, but through a Facebook message or something. So even, I'll be working on an assignment or something, and my uni friends, I'll have to send them a message to kind of with what I'm doing for me to then go, oh yeah, I think that's right. Like it's not so much I'm looking for them to validate what I'm doing. I just need to do that. And so I found, because it conveniently works just like in Facebook Messenger, the journal, it works that same way for me. Like it's a conversation, whereas I think maybe an introvert would treat it as more of it's a conversation as well, but I'm getting my thoughts. I'm writing them down.
Correct.
Whereas I'm kind of having a conversation. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely. The interaction is fundamentally different, even though it's exactly the same.
Yeah,
like that's
really cool.
It's a great little paradox. I mean, I think the effect of being able to write things down, or to practice how to, journaling is a practice. There are habits that you're learning. Learning mantras for how you practice compassion and grace and all these sorts of things are parts of the same neural process. So we're even looking at doing we're building at the moment, literally goes into production next week, an app that looks at how do you switch out of your reactive emotional side when you're spiraling down. What are the things that you can do to sort of switch your mindset back into your rational, positive self? We have this thing about going apeshit, because and I think we talked about this a little bit last time, right? And so when you are going apeshit, what are the things you can do to switch out? And as we've been going through these different switch techniques, because it's an app on the phone and not other things like we've tried static cards before and stuff like that. Yeah, it's that next evolution. We can actually then put the steps in where people are actually doing the steps in the app to switch out. And so that becomes the journal of how they're switching out. And they can start to see some patterns about what makes them switch out from their reactive self to their responsive self. And I think we're up to about 60 different switches that we've got now. We sort of started with a core base of about 10, I think, and we've built out over time. But some things will really resonate with people, and we're really fascinated to see when we do put out to market what the trends are, and what we can see in the data of the, people use. This has never been tracked before, right? We've never had the ability to be able to see what actually people use and what works for people when they switch out.
It's like a big experiment almost, or in a way, isn't it? Yeah,
absolutely.
You kind of track that data
absolutely, because a lot of them will work, but some will just work better, and so we're really, it's the same process though, right? What we've tried to do is componentize being able to do different tricks with your diary in order to get your mindset right. It's all about changing a mindset, getting yourself in a better mindset so you can make better decisions, and make better decisions, you'll have a better life.
Yeah. I think it's so key, especially after our chat last time, that's a while ago now. It's probably must be almost a year ago or something.
Yeah, it was a while ago. Yeah,
I kind of did this thing where I recorded 4 episodes. What we're talking about before, I went, "Oh, this is not perfect," and then I had something happened in me where I went, "You know what? Stuff it. Let's just keep doing it.
Let's give it a crack.
We're all having fun, so let's just keep doing it."
Yeah, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah.
Nice.
But after that, I've been really trying to be really conscious around sort of thinking about that ape, that idea of that, and going, what's making me feel this way in that moment? And it's so key. Like, I'll be sitting there, for instance, in bed or something, and Danny's saying something, and you can feel yourself getting a little bit angry around it. And internally I'm going, what's going on right now? Why am I feeling this way? And how do I change my mindset? And sometimes it is I still feel really angry, but I need to act really positive right now.
Yeah.
And then after a minute of that, you forget that you were angry. Like things like that. And
absolutely. And sometimes it's really hard. Like my ape, if I can call it that, I often gets sort of really skeptical and fearful, and sort of starts to jump at shadows, and my curiosity sort of turns on its head, and all of a sudden I'm curious about what I can't see or what someone's not saying, or in the gaps, and I start to assume what people are thinking, which it's never true, right? It never proves out to be okay. But in that situation, because you do it and you're worried about something, worry and anxiety have this strange feeling that the more it's like to scratch a bite. You worry more, and it kind of gives you temporary lift that you're worrying about it because you think that's the right thing, but it just makes it bigger and more itchier, and the more you scratch it, the bigger it gets, but it kind of feels good to scratch it, but then it spirals you down, right? So it can be really hard to switch yourself out of it, because immediately it's kind of like that moment where you're having to stop scratching the mozzie bite, and it really hurts, and like you really kind of just want to scratch it, and so you get that tension, where it can be really hard to switch out of it, or anger, because you feel so justified that you need to be angry, or feeling hurt, or stressed. Stress is one of those things. If I don't stress, maybe I'm not going to get it done right. And so it becomes the thing that spirals us down. And I think that getting a hold of being able to see it first, and then be able to do something about it, and then not be ashamed of it. I've got a scared ape. It happens. The more I control it, the better it is. But I try not to hate myself for it, right? That's the thing. That the neural. So doing a diary, practicing those switch techniques, it all fits together to try to become not just more aware of your reactive self, but embracing who you are and what you need to do to get ahead in a better mindset and make better decisions.
Yeah, definitely. I think I found myself in that exact situation around the coronavirus stuff that's going on. And, you're just getting bombarded in the news, even though I'm trying to really make sure I'm limiting what I'm watching, trying to get the most. But I'm naturally a bit of a conspiracy theorist, I reckon. Like I really like those thought exercises, entertaining the ideas and going, well, hang on, let's take that a few steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
this is the problem with the fact that the brains love stories, right? Because if there isn't a story that makes sense, we'll make one up. So if we can't join the dots, if there are no joints to be, we'll join the dots, right? We love patterns, we love things to make sense. Even if it's wrong, we would rather believe something that's wrong than be okay with the fact that we don't know.
Yeah.
And because it feels better, right? Even if we know that it's probably wrong, we'll still go, yeah, but it's probably right.
Yeah.
Man probably didn't really land on the moon, like it makes sense. I'll just make up some sort of rationale justification in our minds to see what really did happen. We want to know who shot JFK. We want to know, how much the governments are listening into our every conversations and things like that. And maybe some of them are true. Am I triggering your paranoia now?
A little bit. I can give you answers for all of those.
Yeah. It's funny. We about 10 years ago, I was actually a sound recordist on a TV show that was called The Conspiracy Hunters.
All right.
And we went over to America, and this was only a couple of years after 9/11. And so America was still freaking out, on high alert. And we went over there, and I was a pretty bedraggled muso type. I must have looked like a very unsavory character, and we worked 16-hour days for about 5 weeks straight. Chasing down all things about, population control and what was happening with the phone tapping thing, which ended up being true, which was hilarious, years later. And a whole bunch of other conspiracies that the Bilderbergs and things like that. And interviewed a whole bunch of conspiracy theorists to the extent that by the end of it, you were going, well, what's going on? Well, you start to question everything that's happening in the world. It was an interesting time. I think my name's been blacklisted in America ever since. I'm not quite sure.
Really?
Coming back through the airport, I was tired. I was really tired. And this is a classic. So I'm writing this section in the book at the moment, so this is why it's sort of fresh to me. But I was coming back from Austin, Texas, and I was trying to get home, and I was tired. And as you sort of look over the desert in Austin, Texas, it looks like Australia. It looks like the Australian desert. And I got thousands of songs on my iPod at the time, old school click wheel iPod.
Oh yeah.
And I just went randomly play, and it just played this Tom Waits song. And I downloaded a whole lot of Tom Waits back catalogue that I hadn't listened to, and Tom Talbot's Blues came on. And it's kind of this nice rolling orchestral thing, and you're looking out the window, and I'm sort of on my iPod. I was scrolling through some photos of the boys at the airport. And I was feeling really homesick, and then out of nowhere, that song breaks into Waltzing Matilda as the chorus, right, of this song. It's this beautiful orchestral song, and I just started blubbering. I mean, there's snot coming out. Like the people next to me were like, "Are you okay?" And the more you try to stop, the more it gets worse. I just cracked it. Then we finally, and because you're working so long, this is a very long story. You'll be able to edit it later.
I'm all for long stories.
Because I was working 16-hour days, I hadn't really been able to get a present for Alison. I've been able to pick up the boys' presents because, they wanted football jerseys and stuff like that. Yeah. But finding a good present for your wife in a country where the shopping experiences don't really change is really, really hard to find something unique. And in Austin, before I got on the plane, we were interviewing this radio host. And he's got this big, broad accent, and because I sort of just blamed him and said, I got 3 hours left before I jump on a plane. I don't have a present for my wife. And he goes, son, what you need to go down the street. You need to get some Big Mom's hot sauce. They do the best hot sauce here in the States. You can't get it anywhere in the world. You bring some of that hot sauce and you'll be loving for the end of time. Like this. And I'm like, okay, that's a pretty good recommendation. Me. So I went down and I found this Big Mom's hot sauce, a pack of 3 hot sauces. And I'm like, giddy up, I've landed it. This is it. This is the perfect, Tex-Mex sort of, Mexican-American hot sauce that wasn't that hot. They just called it hot sauce. I think one of them was. Anyway, went on the plane, put it in my baggage. By the time we got to LA, you've got to do this weird changeover of your hand luggage to your cabin luggage, right? Because the international balance between undercarriage and overcarriage are different. Yeah. So you're getting rid of half your overcarriage and putting them into your undercarriage luggage. And I just, I didn't want to break the hot sauce, so I left them in my hand luggage while I was rebacking my bags. And anyway, so bags went on, and then half the airport was closed, so we had to file out. And I've already been on the plane, but we went by Phoenix, saying we still got another 12 hours to go. I'm tired.
You're just wrecked.
I'm wrecked. I got my mate who's a Texan who was part of the film crew flying back with me to Australia, and he's behind me. And then the hand luggage goes through the scanner, and it picks up, and this massive, 9-foot, Negro American guy, this giant of a man, excuse me, sir, is this your bag? And I'm like, yes, it is, Could you please open it up for me? This sort of thing, puts the gloves on. I'm like, what's going on here?
How long is this? 2 years after 9/11 or something?
Yeah. Very, very strict. There's lines here. And behind me, because I was you've got, because it's about 11:30 at night. So you've got families, you've got people all wanting to get back to Australia. They're all exhausted, and they're all in one line. So they're all looking at me going, what's going on? Can we hurry up, please? And he goes, are these yours? And he pulls out the hot sauces. I go, yeah, they're a present for my wife. I'm sorry, sir. The liquid limit is 500 mils for these. And they were like 700 mils or something like this. And I said, dude, it's hot sauce. It's hot sauce. What am I going to do with an extra 200 mils of hot sauce? We can open them up and you can taste them if you like. They're just a present for, sorry, sir, we can't let this on. And this went on for a little bit, and you can feel the pressure of the crowd behind you. And I said, no, this can't be right. I've got to be able to see someone. Do you have like a manager or something? I've got to get these home. These are a present for my wife. What are you doing? And then I just went completely apeshit. My ape just got so irritated. I didn't control it. And I was like, what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do with hot sauce? Am I going to burn the hostess's eyes out? Am I going to somehow use them as projectiles and ninja them at the things? Like, I'm just like, how am I possibly going to do this? If can I tip 200 mils out so I can take 500 mils on? Like, what can I do to get these things on? And just, I said, every that I'm not some sort of friggin' terrorist trying to do what, like I said, every word that you're not supposed to say, right? All the bad words.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that this 9-foot dude, instead of getting more angry, just dropped his guard, and was just because I think he also felt, Australians love a little bit of social injustice, right? And so they were all of a sudden on my side. I turned the crowd.
Yeah.
And he just said, "I'm so sorry, sir. It's my job. I can't do anything about it. I know. Look, don't blame me. Like I don't get paid if I don't do this. That's right." And there was this soft Texan voice that said, "Phil, let's go get a beer." Just pushed me out. But I swear, looking back on it, at that time, that my ape going apeshit, if that guy had had a different reaction, I may have been in Guantanamo Bay for a few months. Yeah. So this is and justifying my actions just because I felt so good going apeshit.
And it just gets more and more and more.
And the thing is, once I did that, there was no going back. People were in corners. People were defending things. There was no way to negotiate it back. There was no niceties. I basically cooked my own goose by going apeshit, right? So the goal that I wanted was undermined by my inability in that moment to just calm the farm, and go, okay, now switch out. But when you're tired and you're hungry and you're irrational and you're emotional, there's just no hope, I
think it's so common,
And this weedy little muso guy was overshadowing a 9-foot American, all American, Maxley. He was just wilted into nothing. That's the strength, and it feels good in that moment that the power of your ape is arresting control, and everyone's on my side and they're all cheering for me. But actually, what I was doing was killing any opportunity I had to get the hot sauce.
Exactly.
So I find that a really interesting thing, a sort of scenario to pick apart, to go, that wasn't a great decision. Could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, and it is. I've probably not to that extent in an airport, but I found myself that in even just a heated discussion with a mate or something about something that starts off being totally inconsequential, but then you just build it up and up and up to the point where no matter what he says, I'm not agreeing with him. I'm not. And you get to the point where you're like, I know that you're 100% right now, but something about me cannot come back down now.
Yeah, Edward de Bono's got this great little analogy of if you box somebody into a corner, they'll defend that corner even if they don't believe it. Like they go, well, I don't actually hold it that much. And that's often when you've got couples or friends or someone fighting, you often have to just talk to them to try to get them out of each, or being boxed into a corner. So one of them's usually boxed into a corner, and if you get them out of that corner, they actually go, well, there is room to move. I know I said there was no room to negotiate, but there is. And you can start the negotiation process once people don't feel like that they're being boxed into a corner. It's a really interesting little quirk of negotiation like that.
Which, tying it back to the journaling, that's what I've found. Those times where I've either written it down, I'm feeling this way, or I've kind of said it out loud. I've gone, oh, I don't actually believe that. Like there's been certain things I've been having a discussion about, something to do with, something to do with faith or something like this, and I've been going, I don't necessarily believe that that's right. You kind of start going down this path and you get worked up, and there's been times where I've had to write that down or say it. I'm going, you know what? I was in the wrong there.
Well, yeah, and sometimes you realize that just by there's a trick or a switch that we call reframing, which is, you write down, because usually when somebody does something to you, if you were going to say something that really offended me, you know, and I write that down later on. This can't believe that Richo said this, you know.
That'll happen.
What a, you know.
How long's your book?
What a you know, and then you go, well, what's the meaning that you make of that? Well, he obviously thinks this, you know, because there's whatever is being said, you're drawing meaning from it and you don't even realize it. And you go, well, what else could it mean? Well, I suppose he could have meant that, you know. Well, what else could he have meant? Well, I suppose it could have been that as well. You know what I mean? Like the meaning that sits behind it is something that you can start to challenge, and you go, well, how true do you think that is? You know, what's an alternative meaning that could be right? And what's the interesting thing is it doesn't actually matter what the meaning was. If I can find a better meaning that puts me into the right light, whatever it is, because it doesn't matter what the truth is. What matters is that I'm able to go, one thing that I do know is that I don't know what your meaning is. And that's the point, you know. And it's a helpful way to reframe, to put you back into your constructive mindset and go, actually, I can now talk to you again, Richo, because I'm okay. I'm now assuming that there's a meaning that sits there that's a different one than I would have assumed for me.
Yeah.
You know.
Have you heard of Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yes.
Yeah. So
anyone who's on LinkedIn has heard of Gary.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Yeah.
Any sort of pretty much any social media. It's nuts. And he was talking to, you know, like this TikTok, like the app. There's this girl called, I think her name's Charlie Damasio or something. So she's this young girl that started. Essentially, she was gaining, say, 4 million followers in a month. Like it was in its peak, and it's still going up. But he was having a one-on-one with her, and she's going like, you know, now that I've got these 50 million followers or whatever, it's something crazy now. I'm getting like so much hate from that. Like every second message seems to be someone hating. And she said, how do you respond to that? And he said, this is going to sound weird, but I look at it all through a lens of compassion. So it's like, because by flipping it now, they don't have any power anymore. Because if I look at those people that are keyboard warriors and they're telling me that I'm ugly, I stop looking at it as in, oh, they're personally attacking me because my face doesn't look the way they want it to be. To, they must be something that's really gone wrong in these people's life. Not so much how can I respond in a compassionate way, but more so how can I just go, it's really sad that they are acting that way, and how can I keep going that way? And I think like that probably is an example of, you can either look at that and take on all that on board and go, oh, I'm not a nice person, or hey, this is obviously a hurting person who's commenting. Yeah, let's look at that. I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, look, celebrity in itself is really interesting. I think a lot of growing up as a muso, I used to tour lots with touring artists who were very famous, and you used to sort of have a fly on the wall look at what they had to deal with. And there's like this tipping point, you know, I love that Malcolm Gladwell concept, but there's this tipping point where somebody becomes just well known to becoming famous, right? And as soon as you become famous, all of a sudden people no longer see you as you, they see you as the famous thing that's been created, as almost like a collective consciousness, you know. It's like none of us know who someone like Brad Pitt is, but most of us know Brad Pitt, right? But we know an image of Brad Pitt. And so when social media is trolling, they're talking to that image of them that they know as Brad Pitt. They're not actually talking to Brad Pitt. You know, they're talking to the image.
To the character of that.
That's right, the character of Brad Pitt. Yeah. You see it in the wonderful journey of Johnny Cash, you know, this whole thing of the character. When Johnny Cash wanted to write music that was more authentically him and less the Man in Black, his sales went through the floor because they weren't interested in Johnny Cash. They were interested in the Man in Black. Yeah. The Man in Black was what they wanted to hear and what they resonated with and what they were following. You know, people forget that it's the fame, that it's the persona. And so a lot of these musos would just say that they're not actually talking to me. They're talking to almost like a thing that resembles me, but it's not actually me because they don't know me. And that disassociation can be unhelpful if the presentation, the actual self, are something that they're fearful of. And so if they try to make that presentational self the self they present to everyone, then you've got some deep psychological problems. But if they can embrace it and just go, well, that's that one over there, and I'm here, and I like me.
Sort of compartmentalize in a healthy way.
A little bit, you know, and that's the way that they sort of dealt with it. And I'm sort of taking that on because, you know, as soon as you start talking about psychological stuff and you start representing things in the media, it's very easy for people to take things out of context, and being able to hold it lightly is not something that I naturally do, but it's a skill that you learn, and there's some of the tricks that you can do to just hold it lightly. I have a very good friend of mine who says, not my circus, not my monkeys. And she'll just say that and water off a duck's back, but it's not my circus, not my monkeys, I can't control it. Why would I try to control it, I think the people that have it the worst are actually politicians. That can be some of the most vile, hate-filled communication towards another individual that I've ever seen in my life. It's politics really brings out, I think, the worst in people. Celebrityism for entertainment has it in a way, but nothing like politics has it.
Do you mean like politicians to each other, or as in like
I mean people. Politicians, they have to be online. They have to be seen to be engaging with people, and just see some of the rhetoric that comes from the hard left or the hard right towards opposing views. It's just gobsmacking. The resilience that the politicians have to have in order to maintain a sense of self and self-respect and not react and not get overwhelmed. And I think the politicians that we've seen for the last hurdle have been the ones that have cracked, and it's too much, and they've just gotten. Your apes are all out, so my ape's going to come out now, and they feel good about it. But actually, history records that very differently. So I think I got a lot of respect for politicians who are able to not react in the face of people who react. And you get some politicians who love it, of course. I have a sneaking suspicion, not knowing Trump personally, but I think Trump feeds off it. I think he loves it, right?
Yeah, that's why he has Twitter.
Completely right. He plays with it. He enjoys it. His whole campaign was he gets on stage knowingly just says something that he knows is going to jack off a whole lot of people, because a whole lot of other people are going to. He's like a troll,
right? Like he's like some of this. I follow a bunch of comedians, and they're like, we should be taking notes off this guy. Like some of the ways that he sets up these punchlines and stuff. You're like, you're a pro at this. You're like, should the president of the United States be a pro at trolling people? I don't know.
Well,
maybe. I don't know.
The fact of the matter is that he's resonated. I mean, politics is a great study of apes, and politicians. Your ape votes, you don't. So politicians that. It's funny when you see two politicians, say from the left and the right of politics, and one will make a really emotional argument, and the other one will try to rationally counter it. But everyone that's hearing that, when they're speaking, one person's speaking to my ape, I think, yeah, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
But my ape is what's going, yeah, that's awesome, that's right. On both sides, no side. You see it the other way around. They'll go and speak to all these other apes, and they go, yeah, and one go, you guys are idiots, and they're, no, you guys don't understand, and you're not listening, and you're like, and all the apes are out, and so it's a big ape fest.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is, television and movies and theatre is a celebration of our apes. That's why I was so good at theatre. I loved theatre, because literally theatre, people go to the theatre to watch apes going ape shit. It's a study of human nature. Shakespeare was a genius. Shakespeare was the first psychologist, as far as I'm concerned. He was brilliant at the human psyche. You really look at plays like the Scottish play is just a beautiful explanation of the human psyche and influence and going ape shit.
Yeah.
All of his plays are essentially really looking at what happens when our apes go completely apeshit, and how does it all go wrong or right, in the sense of like something like Much Ado About Nothing or something like that. Your apes are feeling great, So even in tragedy, our apes feel good because we've been spoken to through our apes. So I think politics and ape behaviour is fascinating, and as we're advising a few politicians at the moment, they navigating some of those things is really interesting, because politicians are like people. You're going to some that are smart, some that are not so intelligent, some that are trustworthy, and some that aren't. Just like normal people, But you get some really smart, intelligent, trustworthy people, and you find those people, and those people don't necessarily sit on one side of politics or the other. People often often come to us, both my wife and I, and ask us, who should we vote for? And it's like, vote for the smart person. Vote for the person who knows what they're doing, who has compassion, who has understanding. Politicians are supposed to listen to the people and represent people.
Yeah.
I think that's particularly here in Australia, it's representational politics. So the politician that's able to listen, to represent the view of most of the people that sit in their electorate, irrespective of what they personally believe, and then use the position that they have to maybe influence the people. But a smart politician will influence the people in order to then push their own agenda, rather than trying to push their own agenda and shove it down people's throats.
Yeah. Which is what a good leader does anyway. A good leader has a vision they have we need to get from here to here. Now my job is to get all of you guys on board with that, so I can help you, so I can take you to that place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And leadership is fantastic, because I think we celebrate leaders in the West, and entrepreneurs to a degree, successful people, whether they be successful in what area of life. And sort of almost bring it back to where we started the conversation, the habits and the things that successful or unsuccessful or whatever do in order to make better decisions don't change. But what's really interesting is when you look at the subset of people who are very successful and you go, do they write a diary? Do they know how to switch out of their mental, do they know how to control their ape? 9 times out of 10 they'll control their ape, and sort of 7 times out of 10 they're writing a diary. You look at the other end, and people very rarely that practice those sorts of habits are very rarely successful. And it kind of makes sense, right? So if you can control your emotional side, I don't know if we went into the Dunedin experiment last time.
Yeah, we did.
So that great experiment really showed the one correlate was your ability to control your emotional reactivity was the one correlate to success, right?
Yeah.
Strong and over and above socioeconomic status or health or, culture or language or level of education or whatever it was, right?
Because you talked about, as a little side note, in that episode, you talked about how I think there was 5 or 6 guys who had gone to prison, and collectively it was like
4 minutes and 27 prisoners. They found out that 4 minutes and 15 seconds of collective reactive decision making translated into 725 years of incarceration.
Insane,
hey? This is your inability to control your emotional reaction has actual ramifications in the real world. When it's illegal behavior, we can track it, like 30 seconds of reactive behavior meant you stab someone that when you've lost your mind, you are out of your mind. That's just a thing that the ape had just taken over control altogether. It may be a reason, but it's not an excuse. No. You've still got to pay for those actions. But when it's not something that's illegal, when it's not something that's necessarily causing physical harm or causing sort of psychological pain that isn't to the extent that can be noticed, what you find is the people that are around you, sort of, even if they agree with you, they go, I'm not gonna give that opportunity to this person because I don't know what they're going to do. I might agree with them now, but what happens if their ape goes apeshit and I don't agree with them before? So they go, I'm not quite sure. And that feeling of being unsure means that person's going to get the opportunity, not you.
Definitely, yeah.
And so that's how humans work, right? And you'll feel justified, and that's why musos that are popular musos are often terrible politicians because they've had their ape fed. The fact that they do go apeshit is what people love on the stage.
Yeah, their whole thing is on emotion.
Absolutely, and people love watching it. I can see that ape.
Jimi Hendrix, he just kind of goes into
a trance. Absolutely. And that's what it's very few musicians sort of get to that point where they can disassociate the two things. I think Bono is amazing because I think he's one of those people that really knows how to turn it up, dial it up and dial it down, in an effective way. But a lot of when they go into politics, I mean, Peter Garrett was a classic example where when you live your ape, you don't know what it is to compromise for the sake of the group. A politician has to represent the people, which means you have to be seen to be compromising sometimes in your own beliefs in order to represent the views of the people that you represent. And apes can't do that. You've got to do that as a rational human being. So I find that all very fascinating. But I mean, the point of this is that, you look from anyone from Jimi Hendrix to Kurt Cobain to, Ben Franklin, they've all, to Albert Einstein, they've all kept diaries, and their diaries are fraught with failings and thoughts about themselves and self-doubts and things that they have to do and things that they didn't do right that they're going to do better tomorrow. And this is the human condition, and I think the moment that we realize that these are tools that we can use to become more influential and successful as human beings, to improve the planet. This is the thing. It's not that far-fetched. No. That if we actually all did this, we'd all make better decisions, irrespective of our creed or our thoughts or our conspiracies that we think are right or wrong. We're still going to make better decisions because we're able to control our emotional reactivity, and other people, we're going to be able to work together better for a better outcome. So it's key. Hey, like this whole, as we've talked about so many times now, but this, as you say, to be able to take a step back and go, how do I control what I'm feeling? Or how do I not necessarily control what I'm feeling, but identify what I'm feeling and then move in that direction? But it is a control. It's like, how do you, once you recognize that your ape is making some of your great decisions, and that's the thing, there's a story of the firefighters of New York back in the late 90s where this firefighter had a very young firefighting team. There was a big apartment block that was on fire. They'd been training for this. The young team was really cracking on. Sometimes firefighters go a month and they don't get a fire. They finally got a fire. We're going to save the day. There's people there. This is what we're built for. Danger. Running in, and they ran in on the first floor, and the old guy that was the older guy that was their captain, or their fire chief, whatever I'm not quite sure the terms, but he sort of paused and went, "We got to get out." And you can sort of hear the radio recordings. I heard it. It was one of my psychology lectures in undergrad. I thought it was fascinating, and you hear them, getting out, and you can hear the younger guys going, "We're here. We're training for this. Why are we going? There might be people downstairs. Why are we going?" And he goes, "Get out now." And in that tone of voice that you go, "All right, we're moving. We'll have this discussion outside." And then just as they got out, the whole ground floor collapsed, and they would have died. They would have been no hope. Anyway, the media was there because it was central New York, and they had a field day. Maybe it was ghosts that was whispering in their ear. Maybe it was the spirits of the dead that had come back. Maybe he could see into the future. How did you know? How did you know? And a couple of psychologists said, "Blow this for a bad joke. We're going to get to the bottom of this." Other people saying, there were people praying on the other side of the continent, and they just felt they needed to pray at that moment. And that was what was getting through. There were angels there that were. And all that might be true, like I don't know, we don't know, but the psychologist said, surely there's something to investigate here. How did he know?
So he just had this feeling. Is that what
his feeling? He's just walked in. He just had this feeling that something was wrong.
Yeah.
And what they found, in subsequent interviews and research, their theory is a really interesting one, in that our brains are actually taking a lot more memories. Basically, everything that we experience, we memorize.
Yeah, right.
It's stored in our memory. We just don't necessarily access it. So we can't access that. But expertise, doing it repetitively over and over again, you start to build a bank of what's expected in a situation. So, and what happens is that if you do something 1,000 times, and in that 1,001st time, you go into that situation. So the five, it was almost like in the brain, the ape in his brain had, like, in a split second, was able to compare this new situation with 1,000 others that had gone before, and he's gone, something's not right.
Yeah,
get out.
Different.
Yeah, and difference, change, is seen as threatening, seen as dangerous. That's why in organisations we hate change. In our daily lives we react to change. We mourn change, right? And so his ape actually made him make a very important decision, because his ape said, something's different here from this situation. Get out. And they did, and they were saved in that moment. And I think that says something for, yes, there's the enthusiasm of youth is good, but the wisdom of experience is tempered by that, and you need both, right? Definitely. This is why, diverse workplaces are important, because there's actually value in sometimes telling somebody with less experience that that's not a great idea, and when they go, why? And they go, to be honest, I can't tell you. It just feels wrong. It just feels like it's going to screw up somehow. And because they can't tell them, they go ahead and do it, and it screws up, and they go, how did you know? It's like, I don't know. I just felt like it was going to screw up. Yeah. You also get people that just do that out of fun because, loss aversion or whatnot. But not notwithstanding, there is value in experience, as well as there's value in the energy of use challenging those assumptions and those status quos that we build up.
I've seen that both ways, even just at uni. So I'm doing graphic design at uni. And so it's very much, there's logic and process to it, but there's also a lot of kind of, this works because it works. Like there's a few things. So, we'll do a design or something, bring it to our lecturer. And last trimester, I had this guy he'd been in the industry for, I think he said had his own business for 45 years or something. So he's an older fella. So he'd come through from all the old technologies into computers. And I bought him a design that I thought looked great. It was just a different logo. And he said, this looks good, Richard. Like, it looks great, but there's something off about it. And I said, oh, what do you mean? Like, I didn't get that defensive, but I went, I thought it looks great. What else going on? And he says, what if I just did this? And he moved two little elements, and boom, it just worked. I said, how did you know how to do that? He said, I told you before, I've done this for 45 years.
That's right.
I've learned. He goes, I still don't know why that works, but I've done it that many times that it works. That works. On the flip side, there was another girl in my class who she did not want to know about it. He would say, change this. No, I'm not changing that. Like, this is how it works, this sort of thing. Well, hang on. You should probably do that differently. No, I'm not changing that sort of thing. And he kind of said to me afterwards, I think I was the last one there, and he said, look, that attitude, that's not going to get her very far in this industry, because she's going to go into an industry and sit next to an art director who's got 30 years experience. And the first time she says that, they'll probably go, okay, see you later. But it says your job is to kind of come here with what you think, and then somebody else's experience can talk into that. Yeah. And it's
interesting. I mean, you see the same thing in music. I mean, I'm an old muso now, and I was the young muso, I was the one that was 15 or 16 touring the country with some of the biggest acts, and you think, wow, this is cool. I listen to recordings of myself back there and go, what were they thinking? Why did they bring me on? I was terrible, Yeah. But also, I had this vision of somehow older was less fresh. They less knew how to do it. And what I realized I was experiencing then is what they call, I think it's the Diane-Kruger effect. I think, I can't quite bring it to mind.
Diane, no.
No.
Diana Crow.
It's Diana Crow. I think it's the Diane-Kruger effect. Anyway, it's this effect where she had A students and C students, and whenever she would give the C students their mark, the C students would complain and go, why was that a C? I should have been an A. And she thought this was really weird. And so she went, actually, I'll give these C students an unmarked assignments, and you tell me which one is the C and which one is the A. Yeah, right. And the C students couldn't pick the difference. They said, no, they're all the same. When she gave it to the A students knew exactly which ones were the A's and which ones were the C's, with very little variance in wrong answers. And it's that whole thing with experience or knowledge. It's easy to look backwards and see the gap, but when you haven't experienced it yet, you don't know the gap. You can't see the gap. And so often you'll just go, you don't know what you're talking about, or you don't know, we're doing it this way. And it's just quite difficult when you're dealing with people in that situation, because you've just got to sort of let them, oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
I'll need to sit back here for a couple of years and you'll figure it out. We'll be okay in a couple of years.
My parents did that a lot when I was a teenager. Like their dad would give me advice and I'd go, "You're an idiot. Like, what are you talking about? You don't know what's going on." Or not even when I was a teenager, when I'd say young adult. And then I remember him saying quite vividly, going, "Righto, you figure it out and you'll find out." And then, a year later you come with your tail between your legs and go, "I see why you said that, Dad."
Yeah.
But at the time, no way was he correct.
And there is absolutely a place for the vigor of youth to challenge the status quo. Definitely. There is no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And you get the crusty oldies who are doing things because they've done it all the time before and they don't see the disruptors that come into market and all these sorts of things. The blind spots that get created by that are huge, right? Yeah. We know that. But this is the thing, is that it's actually in the balance of the two that you actually get great results. And I think that's, you get the challenge and you get the experience, the challenge and the experience. And if you don't have both, you're going to get a less rounded group of individuals that start to grow together. And that's the wonderful thing about team building that I love and group building. And apes going apeshit, and ape behaviours, and how they respond and how you make strong groups with the differences of worldviews and opinions,
Well, the best leaders, don't they? They surround themselves with people who are going to challenge them from all different sort of aspects of that, not so much life, but from that team, So you see these leaders, I guess, and you see it in politics. A new politician gets in and then they'll just elect people who are they're just yes men, kind of sit behind and nod their heads. Whereas you see the best politicians come in and they've got people who really, challenge them. And from the outside looking in, you sometimes look at that and go, "Oh, that's a bit of a dysfunctional," But when you actually see them working, okay, I see what's going on now. There's a bulk of opinions right now working together. I don't think we see that as much as we would like to see, but that's happening, I guess, around the place.
Yeah, and sometimes you see it in the most unlikely of places. One of the politicians in Australia that was very good at that, and this will become a surprise to a lot of people. Not a politician of whom a lot of people agree with a lot of things that he did, but Tony Abbott was known for that. He would bring in. There was a guy that wrote a book called Red Tory that came in basically saying that the left had turned social policy to crap because they were, too closely, they weren't economic enough, and the right had screwed up the economy because they'd linked it too closely to the market, and so they couldn't advocate it on behalf of the people against the market. And so that book was saying you need conservative politics to reform social policy, and you need left politics to reform the economy. And it was a really interesting thing. And so he came over and was really challenging, largely a very conservative government on the way that it was handling the economy, and challenged them and saying, look, by handling it so conservatively, are you actually screwing it up,
Yeah, you help or a hindrance.
Yeah, and that was just an example. So he did a lot of that, whether the decisions were good or bad, that he made in subsequent. His history shows us that's the most tumultuous time in Australian politics,
That's
so
crazy, eh?
that was nuts, right? We had five prime ministers in 2 years or something crazy,
you never know
right?
If you wake up the next day, who would be the prime minister?
That's right, and it was a really tumultuous time in politics, and I think it was the part of the way that the nation of Australia grew up a little bit. I think as a collective psychology as a nation, I think through that sort of turmoil, which I think is fascinating. But we digress.
Yeah.
We digress.
Yeah.
That's a much heavier topic for a very. We need a few more of these wines, I think, to get into the nuances of that.
Oh yeah.
But it is interesting I had a conversation literally earlier on today talking about what makes a good decision. And why can the same decision from two different people, and for one person it's a good decision, and for one person it's not a great decision, and for me this is because a good decision is always one that aligns with your values, whatever those values would be. You know, you can only make a decision either in your finances, whatever they might be, however you're building your wealth or your asset base or whatever, with your family and your relationships, or with your health, your mental, physical, spiritual health. We sort of alluded to that before. There's no other decision in your life that falls out of those three buckets.
Yeah, right.
We've tried to break that model. There's no other you only ever make decisions based on those three things.
Yeah.
And what makes a good decision is one that benefits one of those things without hurting one of the other areas, and aligns with your values. So if your value set is different and remarkably different from someone else, you can find that two people can make good decisions for themselves that advance themselves, that are sometimes diametrically opposed. I find that quite fascinating.
That is fascinating. Yeah, that is really fascinating, especially if you incorporate that into like a team then as well. And these people, there might be something that there's something that they're both trying to achieve, but if they both are making that decision, one is going to get them further towards that goal, and the other could take them back. But for them, they could be both a good decision.
Yeah, that's right. You know, and if you look at it more socially, like if you step out of the individual and you look at the society as a whole, you need that diversity of thought in order to grow, in order for that collective consciousness to mature. If the good decision was always the same, it wouldn't work. Our brains just don't work like that. We actually need the clash of ideas in order to. We should be celebrating the fact that other people have different ideas to us, not fighting it. You know, the utopia is not everyone agreeing.
No,
that's actually death.
It's everyone disagreeing, but in a good way, healthy way.
The clash of ideas, right? The clash of ideas doesn't have to be an argument.
No.
The clash of ideas doesn't have to be apes out at 10 paces. The clash of ideas can be everyone's apes in, but they're genuinely debating an idea that maybe they won't have come to each other's point of view, but you know, you may have learned something new or changed your perspective in some way. It's funny, and we won't get into personality and all those sorts of things, which is wonderful when you start talking about these things. But
could be another
I love the debate. I love being able to challenge people's ideas, and sometimes I'll actually take a position in an intellectual stoush that I don't actually believe, just to have a stoush, you know,
almost
just
like devil's advocate,
a little bit, yeah. And I've got some friends. And he's a criminologist. You know, the criminologist and psychologist walk into a bar. It's like it's the start of a joke, right? And we would debate these ideas. You know, I have certain spiritual ideas. He doesn't have those same sort of ideas, and we're looking at sociology. So we sort of were able to have this conversation. They kept coming back, and one day my wife Alison said, "I don't know why they keep coming over." I said, "What are you talking about? We have a great time." He goes, "You two just fight the entire time you're over." And I'm like, "Are you kidding? That's not a fight. That's like food. That's like we're feeding off each other. We walk out going, that was the best night ever."
Yeah.
And I totally didn't even see that. My wife's sitting in the corner frazzled going, "Oh my God, is there going to be a punch up soon? You know, are they going to be fists at 10 paces, you know?" Which I think is hilarious, you know. But in a way, our like I am. That feels good to my ape, you know. That is our apes coming out, but we're kind of stimulating us, you know, emotionally. And what's interesting, I know you said before about when you were a teenager and what you were doing with your dad. I mean, I think particularly teenagers are perfect examples of pure ape behavior. You know, when a teenager is angry, upset, depressed, anxious, stressed, they can't hide it very well a lot of the time. Some can. I'm being pejorative, of course, but for a lot of the time, it's they're just naked apes, you know, and a lot of that is because the frontal lobe parts of the brain haven't grown yet, you know, and they don't grow until they're sort of been there for some guys in particular until their late 20s, you know. It's why, you know, I'm scared about my sons getting licenses now and they're 18, and when I was 18, if anyone didn't get, you know, if I got blocked for getting my license, that would not have been okay. And so, you know, we're trying to drive, but that's why you have 100 hours of practice. You're trying to train your ape how to drive, how not to react in a situation. What happens in a road rage situation when somebody tries to cut you off and they get angry, you know, teaching your kids, that's where you don't get out, but you're not trying to teach them intellectually. You're trying to train them. What happens if this happens? See that person there when I'm driving, you point them out. Someone else is really upset. This is what you do. You don't react. You don't respond. You let them do their thing. That's them. They've had a hard day. Use reframing. Look at them. Tell a different story. Maybe they've just lost their job. They've got some bad news that they're needing to go to the hospital or something. We're getting in their way unintentionally. Maybe we remind them of somebody who abused them as a kid. You can make up all these different stories. None of them are right. Just to reframe, snatch yourself out of your reactive self into your more right self, and avoid potentially a harmful conflict. You know. So this is. I don't know how I got into that. I did. No, that was a real loop, wasn't it? We're looping lots here.
I've done that. I find I've had to do that. It's funny. You talked about how sometimes that is the frontal cortex doesn't necessarily develop until your late 20s. So I'm 30 this year. I reckon it's only been the last couple of years that I've started to really sort of take notice of that as well, and probably because I've started educating myself a lot more on this. But I found myself when I was driving, for instance, I used to hate people tailgating me. So I would almost. Something inside of me would get a little bit excited going, oh, this person's going to tailgate me because that means I can slow down a bit just to piss them off.
Oh, you're one of those passive-aggressive drivers.
Well, that's what I used to. I used to be like that.
I can see you doing that. Absolutely.
Like, oh, come on.
You end up doing 30 kilometres an hour in a 60 zone.
And like I'd be doing I'd usually be doing 70 in a 60, but if someone behind me was in a hurry, I'd slow down. Which is just a jerk move. Yeah. But I now reframe it. As you say, I do that a lot actually. I go, imagine if this person's on the way to their hospital to visit their wife who's just been rushed there. I'll just let them go because it's not worth getting in an argument. And I know as well, I'm like, if I did get in a fight with this person, I know they would definitely come off better than I would, Like.
I find it funny that, at the lights, when a car won't let one merge, one-on-one, and you just think, what? So you're one car spot in front.
People are nuts.
Has this really affect, of course it doesn't. Or the people in the aeroplane, I saw a funny meme the other day, science says that people that stand up immediately when they can on an aeroplane get out of the plane at least 0.01 seconds earlier than the next person.
Yeah. I get infuriated by that as well. Like people are up and then they just stand there and people, I'll deliberately sit there for ages. Maybe I am a big troll. But then I know that the person, say I'm like in the aisle and there's a person next to me, I can feel them just seething and getting infuriated that I'm not standing up. But something inside of me enjoys that.
It's the same. You're the slow car, but in an aeroplane. That's your slow car version of an aeroplane. And in fact, because you can feel that pissed offness, you're more likely to sit there just for a little bit longer. Yeah.
Maybe I should get Twitter and be like Trump or something.
Dude, we need to have another sesh, but you need to get on the couch, dude. You need to get on the couch, man.
That is bad. At least I'm aware of that. Yeah.
Well, that's the first step. The first step's awareness. Step number 2 is, I used to have a friend who used to feel that and used to actually turn around and just engage with them.
Yeah, right.
Just to say, geez, Brisbane's, when we get in Brisbane, it's like, the humidity's about to hit us when we get out there. And as soon as it did something like that, all of a sudden it tapered away, the tension's gone. And he's the particular type of person that can do that and just get away with it too, which doesn't cause all of a sudden an international incident.
Yeah.
But he always, the ability to be able to diffuse someone else's ape is a massive skill to learn. Controlling your own ape is the first step. Helping others around you control their apes is a whole different and advanced skill. And then, the third thing is, how do you communicate difficult conversations to people without triggering their apes? And then finally, how do you intentionally trigger their apes in order to lead to a desired behaviour?
Yeah.
And that's what marketers are very good at, right? And campaigns and politicians are quite
pandering
good at.
to that ape, isn't it, in a way?
You put out the bananas basically so the apes follow the bananas, and that's how we navigate organisational change a lot and things like that. It's not a thing. It's just understanding how the brains work and helping people make better decisions based on the decision architecture, as we call it, that sits around those decisions.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. I reckon we better wrap this sucker up.
I know. What was it? Midnight now? Where are we going?
I don't know. What have we got?
That's good.
An hour and 25 minutes.
That's not too bad. There's some editing to go on there.
Yeah, a little bit.
There's some definite editing.
I don't know. I try not to edit too much. Try to leave it mostly sort of raw, I guess. But if I'll have a listen back and I'll find out.
You're always welcome back in the cellar any time you want, mate.
It was great. So
anytime.
Before we finish up, so this digital journal, can people find? Because I know I've got it, but can people just find that somewhere? Or was it?
Yeah, if people go on the Decida site, so decida.co, not .com, .co, you'll see Andy. So Andy stands for Artificial Neural Digital Interface. Andy is the diary digital interface that you can then click through pretty easily and start the conversation. So you do need to be on at the moment Facebook Messenger in order to have that chat. But it's in its sort of early stage development. We're just using that as the channel at the moment. But it's pretty good.
Description of the link description thing. I'll put all that in there for you. So
cool.
For other people.
Yeah, nice.
Because you already know where it is. Anyway, awesome, man. It's been so good.
Easy done.
Definitely be doing this again. And that wine was delicious.
I'll have to step it up next time, right? Give you a real. Well, maybe it'll be half wine appreciation, half psychology.
Yeah, that would be actually really cool.
Nice.
Awesome, man. Alrighty, thanks everybody. See you, Phil.